Hey Clear Lake peeps, Ross Ingham with Clear Lake Guide Service. It's April Fool's Day and this whole thing is not very funny. I'll tell you that right now. As he walks out of screen. Okay, real quickly, conditions. Even though we've had some kind of screwed up weather the last, let's say the last 3 or 4 days, it has not equated to anything as far as a change in the lake level. We're running right now at 4.6 feet. Compared to last year, remember, seems like every spring we've got something going on. Last year at this time the lake was flooded at 9.85 feet, exact 4/1/220 to 4/1/219. So we were actually a little over 5 feet higher last year. Full lake is considered roughly 7.5. We'll call it 755, 756. So we're about 3 feet short of a full lake, and it's not looking really encouraging that we're going to get a whole lot more. So every time that they forecast rain, it seems like it just kind of fizzles out on us. So no update on when we're going to get back on the lake. We listened to a little bit of a presentation last night. Doesn't sound very encouraging. I know I've initially canceled all trips through the 10th and probably going to have to do the same thing through the end of the month. I think I'll be surprised if we get back on the water, by the end of April. So I'm looking more at May 1st probably, but that's just a guess because there's no official notification one way or the other. So there's the update on what's going on and what's happening. The answer is nothing. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about fishing line and the fishing line that we use. And again, I'm not trying to sell anything to anybody. I'm just sharing with you folks experience from 18 years of guiding and watching people crawl in the boat and things that they run into. There's many of you who are probably more of an expert at any of this stuff than I am. I'm just a fisherman. That's just what I do. So, but what I do see, I see enough of it that I thought, I'm going to address my stuff towards the people who aren't quite as experienced, and if somebody else picks something else up, that's great. Real short story, how I got into braid. I grew up fishing, the foothill reservoirs, Tulloch, Pedro, Maloney's, McClure, and it was all spinning rods. It was all, for the most part, 4, 6, 8 pound test. 8 pound was really heavy monofilament, and monofilament that's tough stuff to fish with, plain and simple. So I come up to Clear Lake 20 some odd years ago, probably even longer than that. It was the first time I really got in a good bed fishing experience, was able to do some sight fishing, and I had this little system worked out with a little dinky 1/16 ounce brass weight, a little glass faceted bead, and a little creature bait on, and I thought I was pretty good with it. The problem I ran into was it was a hard bait to cast and put into spots, and I couldn't do it on much more than about 8 pound monofilament when you're trying to get it in around docks and whatnot. So I lost a lot of fish, which wasn't good. It was kind of frustrating. I lost some really, really good fish. So I started thinking about what was the next step. Well, obviously the next step was going up to a heavier line, so I went up to 10 pound monofilament, and you can't cast a light bait with 10 pound monofilament. It just doesn't work. Too many coils, too much memory in the line, too thick a diameter. So the next step was looking at braids. And I went through a couple before I finally found one I was comfortable with. And I'm still fishing with it today. Every one of my spinning rods has braid on it, Power Pro. All my spinning rods for clients have Power Pro on them. The main line that I use is 10 pound test. It just seems to be a good all-around size for the kind of fishing that we do. But, and I'll talk a little bit about it a little bit further on. But, the biggest thing, I'll see people show up with their own rods, and maybe those rods and reels haven't been used in a month, 2 months, whatever. And they've got monofilament on it. Maybe they've got 10, maybe they've got 12. I've seen people with 15-pound monofilament. And that's great if you have a big, heavy bait to throw, but there's so much resistance going through those guides, you just can't get any distance with it. So there's a lot of benefits to switching, especially on spinning gear, switching from monofilament to braid. Biggest drawback for most people, they think braid's more expensive than monofilament. And by the yard it is. But when you consider that really about 6 months of use with monofilament, and it probably ought to be switched, braid, if you put a 50-yard top shot on, which means just peel off enough line off your spool to where you can put about 50 yards of braid on top of a backing that's already in there, the average person is going to get 2 years on that braid. So now all of a sudden, the price of that braid is starting to sound really economical. And then the other trick, this is the part that it took me a while to figure out. You'll start to think that your braid is going bad because you can start to see the color starts to fade out, and you might even see little frays, and it just starts to get a little bit of rough. That's when it's time to change your braid. All I do, let's say I've got a spinning reel that I've got 50 yards of 10-pound braid on it. Stretch it out, go to the end where I tied the top knot, and when you look at that bottom section of braid, it's brand new. It's still bright, in my case, bright yellow. So all you do is just flip it over. Take the end that you're work fishing with, tie it down at the bottom of the spool, reel it back on. Now you're going to get another 2 years out of that same 50-yard top shot of line. So it becomes economical real quick. The other benefits that you get out of it, it just behaves a lot better on spinning gear. You don't get as many loops, you don't get as many twists. You can get a longer cast with it. You get much better hook sets because there's virtually no stretch in it. So instead of trying to pile up a bunch of pressure to where you can finally get that monofilament stretched enough to get a good hook set, with braid, little pop, they're hooked. The other thing it does is it really gives you a really good visual on your line as you're fishing it. And what you'll find, especially in a lot of these finesse fishing techniques, is you're going to find that you're going to see as many bites as you feel. Because by watching that line, you're going to see it twitch, you're going to see it, if it's tight, it'll go loose, if it's loose, it'll go tight, it'll start swimming left, it'll start swimming right. Once you start watching your line, and especially if it's a line you choose to use that you can see, you won't believe how many more bites you're going to see. And I'm doing this, I'm mainly right now talking about spinning gear, but I've told you folks that I'm really simple-minded and I try to keep things simple. I love this yellow Power Pro. This is 10-pound test. The reason it's yellow, the reason I like yellow, is if I'm in front of the boat watching clients in the back of the boat, I can see that yellow from 25, 30 feet away, sometimes even 15 yards away, and I can tell where their line is and what it's doing, even if they might not be able to see it. Now I have a system, and it's pretty simple, and that's that if you pick up a reel and it's got yellow line on it, it's 10-pound test. You pick up a reel and it's got red line on it, it's 20-pound test. You pick up a reel and it's got green on it, it's 50-pound test. Those basically the only 3-pound tests that I use. So, you pick up a bait caster that I haven't used in a year, and I already know what's on it. I don't have to sit and try to figure it out. I don't have to write on the reel. I don't have to put a sticker on it, whatever. So, as I've said before, and I'll say again, I'm really simple-minded. So, if it's simple, I can do it. I can also remember it. Probably the other thing, and I'm gearing this mostly today towards spinning reels. I have been starting to goof around with this. A friend of mine, Matt, turned me on to this. This is the Power Pro Max Quattro. And the cool thing about this is it allowed me to put 20-pound braid on. It's 25% thinner than the original Power Pro. So I could go 20-pound test on my spinning rods, and now whether it's a drop shot, a shaky head, a Senko, a Rico, a square bill, I've got a little bit extra insurance with that 20-pound test. So far, I'm extremely happy with it. It feels a little bit different than the original Power Pro. It seems to cast the same distance, so I'm really happy with it for right now. So a lot of you are afraid that you can't tie the leaders with these things. It's really kind of a simple knot. I just use the uni to uni knot. If you buy a package of Power Pro, you know, there's a description in there and it shows you how to tie it, or you can go online and see how to tie it. I know there's a lot of stuff out there that is not a very good knot, or there's better knots. I'm just telling you from my experience of using it for close to 20 years. If my line breaks, it isn't because the knot failed. There's something else that we did wrong. It's been a very dependable knot for these lighter lines and, you know, rods that have softer actions, which these spinning rods do. So we use it for everything. You know, it works great for small underspins, like little cool baits. Like I said, drop shotting, Ned rig. The only thing that I do on a Ned rig is probably the only exception, I throw it on 8-pound braid, but you don't have to. It's just a personal thing. So, biggest reasons to switch to braid. Number one, in the long run, more economical. Number two, because there's virtually no line stretch, you're going to feel more bites. Number three, if you get a color like the yellow that you can see, you'll see more bites and you'll learn more about what your baits are doing. And number four, because there's so little stretch, your hook sets are going to be better. Number five, you're not going to have to change it as often. So any of you folks have any questions about this, give me a holler, contact me like you've been doing, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thanks. Ross England, Clear Lake Guide Service. We'll see you next time.